Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching Gulf Today on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Red Cross says Hamas has handed over one of the two last hostage bodies in Gaza. Red Cross has acted as an intermediary between Hamas and Israel during the Gaza Strip war. UN Ambassador Danny Danon will join US counterpart Mike Waltz on a visit to Israel from December 8 to 10. The trip continues Trump administration's engagement following the October Gaza ceasefire. US Ambassador to the UN Mike Waltz to visit Israel with Israeli counterpart next week. The two will be in the country from 8 to 10th of December. Pope Leo calls on Hezbollah to lay down arms and end dialogue. Pope explained that the Vatican calls on all conflicting parties to abandon weapons and violence and resort to the dialogue table. Saudi Arabia approves 2026 budget with planned deficit to drive Vision 2030 growth. The Saudi government says the budget positions the kingdom to balance short-term fiscal pressures with long-term structural reforms. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara met delegation from U.S. oil major Chevron and the Syrian Petroleum Company to discuss cooperation in oil and gas exploration fields on Syrian shores, the Syrian state news agency said. GCC Secretary General Hassan al-Budaiwi says Gulf states are focused on finalizing a joint defensive air shield in the near future. US-Russia find no compromise on key territory issue after Ukraine talks. Kremlin says Ukraine talks with US useful but lot of work ahead. And viewers, Hamas has claimed to have handed over the remains of one of the two last deceased hostages still in Gaza. The International Committee of the Red Cross confirmed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the remains were received by Israeli forces and would be taken for forensic testing. The two remaining deceased hostages are Israeli police officer Ran Guli and Thai national Sutzizak, both kidnapped during Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. And now the Geneva-based ICRC has acted as an intermediary throughout the conflict, facilitating the release of living hostages and the transfer of remains. This handover is part of the October ceasefire agreement and highlights ongoing efforts to resolve the humanitarian aspects of the two-year war in Gaza. And joining us live is now Shruti Dasgupta, International Affairs expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Shruti, for joining us here at NewsX World this morning. Appreciate you giving us your time. Now, another hostage's body has been handed over to Israel, but the ceasefire remains brittle. How do you weigh this?
Well, the exchange of prisoners with the captives, as well as the remains of the captives that Hamas has given up, is a step towards peace, a much required step towards peace, but it's a very small one. As you have correctly called it, the peace is very brittle, fragile, can be fractured at any moment by aggressive actions from either side. But for now, the bodies that have been sent, the latest bite about it is that they were small pieces, they were not intact bodies, one. Two, that the forensic reports are claiming that they are not of the people that were taken by Hamas at that time. So probably a random body handover has been done to kind of quell the peace, which raises the third point, whether those people are still alive and have been kept as a pawn to the peace that is there, or is Hamas not willing to comply with the rules of peace that have been set forth by the world. and whether something worse has happened to these people at the hands of Hamas, and the horrors are so bad that they cannot afford to give the exact remains back to Israel, because they understand that it would uh, provoke public sentiments against Hamas and their deeds. So the hostage standover, what we've known is there are open source media videos that are available that show that sometimes they would take random bodies out, bury them in the rubble in Gaza, and then rush to call the Red Cross people and say, look, we found the bodies. So there are incidences that kind of relate to why the forensic testing is being done, because the faith in Hamas's humanity is lesser than zero as of now. And so the current hostage exchange and the remains exchange is critical to see how far this peace will last.
Shruti, there are also claims of an increasing number of journalists being killed in Gaza, Lebanon, even in Israel. How do you view that situation there?
Well, that is the fog of war, unfortunately. If you're reporting from an active zone where the war is happening, there are bombs as well as ammunition exploding near you, then you are willingly putting yourself in the line of fire. This is what happens with soldiers, also civilians, as well as journalists who put their lives online to give the world the correct view of what's actually happening on ground. So killing of journalists in an active combat zone is not an unknown fact. It is a very common thing. They get injured in their line of duty, their chosen field, and they have a lot of trauma when they come back from such kind of war zones after reporting. So this is part of the job that they take on. They have willingly put their lives on a particular at a particular risk zone. Now, beyond that, if you claim that they are deliberately taking on journalists, as in they have identified a person and then shot him because they are a journalist, that is a point of concern. Journalists have lost their lives because this is an urban warfare. And urban warfare demands larger loss of casualties than a military to military combat. So that is why a larger number of journalists have seen atrocities happen, and they've faced active combat and lost their lives to it. It is regrettable, but I hope that they understand it is never targeted towards the journalists. Rather, some of them have been found to be working with October 7 Hamas. In fact, some of them, Reuters, I believe, has been unable to identify this, but they had one of their own journalists was found to be part of the October 7th celebrations and attacks. So there is a larger gray zone in the conversation about the loss of life for journalists.
All right, a clearly larger call for protection for those reporting in war-torn areas. But thank you, Shruti, for speaking to us here. And we now move on, viewers. Israel's UN Ambassador Danny Danon will accompany his US counterpart Mike Waltz on a visit to Israel next week. Danon's office has told Israeli state media the two will be in the country from December 8 to 10. Waltz is the latest in a string of top Trump administration officials to visit since the Gaza ceasefire went into effect in October. This comes as the Prime Minister's office in Israel had earlier stated that US President Donald Trump had invited Netanyahu to the White House in the near future, shortly after Trump said Israel should maintain a strong dialogue with Syria. Shruti, requested to join us back in this discussion. What do you think are going to be some of the key talking points in this meeting?
Well, continued peace is one. How to ensure that Israel maintains its sovereignty without actually disturbing the sovereign rights of other nations. There is obviously a larger conversation which will see whether Israel is guilty of human rights violations or not, but that would probably be behind closed doors rather than in open conversation points. there will also be a part of whether the Lebanon excursion, which it seems that now Israel is taking the flag off, is something that is going to be the next war zone in the Middle East, because I do believe that they are going to be handing over the list of intelligence reports that are going to show the rearmament of Hezbollah in the southern part of Lebanon, where it has again, right after the departure of the Pope, has sent drones, has been collecting information, has been also an active combat zone for Israel. So United States and UN and Israel are going to have to decide how much is enough, what is the price that Israel is willing to pay to maintain its sovereignty, and how many other wars will have to be fought, not just by Israel, but by humanity, to ensure that the right of existence is available to both Jews as well as Muslims.
All right, thank you, Shruti, for joining us and giving your perspective. For that, viewers, let's also tell you that Israel's permanent representative to Israel, Danny Danon, has slammed an annual UN resolution calling on Israel to withdraw from Golan Heights. In a post on X, Danon has said that the UN General Assembly is disconnected from reality. This comes as the General Assembly has passed 2 resolutions calling Israel to withdraw from the Golan Heights and from the West Bank and East Jerusalem. The resolution calling for an Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank and East Jerusalem passes with 151 countries in favor, 11 against and 11 abstentions. The resolution on the Golan Heights passes with 123 in favor, 7 against and 41 abstentions. In both cases, Israel and the US both voted against the resolutions. The Golan resolution comes as efforts continue toward a security accord between Israel and Syria, from which Israel conquered the territory in the 1967-60 war. It later annexed the Golan. Lev Aaron, who's a Middle East commentator from Tel Aviv, now joins us live. Thank you, Lev, for joining us. What do you think are going to be the ramifications of this resolution? How is Israel likely to respond?
Thank you for having me. Since the first tenure of Trump, America sees Golan Heights as part of Israel. So I think the de facto, and also as far as the Israel law is concerned, also de jure status of Golan Heights will remain the same. I don't find Israel is very sad about the UN because only a sliver of the countries in the UN are pro-Israeli, and this is something that Israel has expected for a long time.
All right, is there any official statement that Israel is expected to issue against the UN resolution?
Right now, Lebanon is bringing most of the attention in Israel because on one hand, we have a ceasefire. On the other hand, we see that Hezbollah tries to rearm. So as long as we see a danger of war between Lebanon and Israel, not even Lebanon, because Lebanon and Israel are in a de facto peace since 1949, but as long as we see a danger of a war between Hezbollah and Israel, I think most of the attention of Israel will go to the Lebanese border. And as far as Syria is concerned, Israel is more concerned not about the Golan Heights that Israel occupied in 1967 and again in 1973. It is more concerned that the new territories that Israel took for this defense reasons after Assad lost power in Damascus, that America or other international force will force Israel to go back to the Golan Heights.
Okay. Well, thank you for your comment there, Lev. I request you to stay on with us, though, as we have some more news now coming in. Pope Leo XIV has urged Hezbollah to lay down its weapons and join national dialogue during his visit to Lebanon. The Pope called on all parties to renounce violence and return to negotiations, while focusing his political meetings on de-escalating regional and internal disputes. When asked about the letter Hezbollah sent ahead of his arrival, the Pope said that he preferred not to comment on it.
Un po' dietro le, come si dice, le quinte, una cosa che infatti già abbiamo fatto e continueremo a fare per cercare di, diciamo, convincere le parti a lasciare le armi e la violenza e venire insieme al tavolo di dialogo, a cercare risposte e soluzioni che non sono violente ma che possono essere più efficaci e meglio per il popolo. Evidentemente c'è da parte della Chiesa la proposta che lasciano le armi e che cerchiamo il dialogo, però più di questo preferisco non commentare in questo contesto.
I request Lev Aaron, Middle East commentator, to join us back in the discussion here. Lev, Pope has offered his rare insight into the conflict. In fact, has urged both parties to move towards peace. This is a rather welcome step. What do you see from here on?
Look, if we look at the non-Shia majority in Lebanon, only a sliver of it wants Hezbollah inside Lebanon as a guerrilla fighters against Israel. And thanks to the war, I'm sorry to say thanks to the war, yes, because war is a terrible thing. But thanks to this war between Hezbollah and Israel, Hezbollah was defeated, and lots of forces in Lebanon that were silent and were afraid to be openly anti-Hezbollah, they're now opening their eyes and they have some kind of legitimacy. And the Pope visit is, again, it is a chance for the Lebanese majority who wants a peace in Israel, who wants normalcy with Israel, to say it openly and to demand that Hezbollah will be a normal political party within the Lebanese parliament and not a terrorist guerrilla group that tries to create wars all over. Now that Iran was defeated in 12 days by Israel, I think more and more Lebanese parties have more courage to say what they really think.
All right. Well, thanks for your perspective there, Lev. Do stay on. There's some news now coming in from Saudi Arabia as well. Saudi Arabia, viewers, has approved its state budget 2026, forecasting a narrower fiscal deficit as it shifts spending to priority sectors like industry and logistics in a push to increase non-oil revenue. The kingdom has projected a deficit of $44 billion, or about 3.3% of GDP. That would be down from the $65 billion it now estimates for this year, after lower oil prices and production weighed on revenue. Spending overshot the budgeted level by around 4%. Meanwhile, the Saudi Finance Minister Mohammed Al-Jadaan has responded. Let's listen into what he had to say.
في ميزانية 2025 أعتقد سمعنا في البيان الذي صدر قبل قليل أرقام ميزانية 25 التي انتهت بنفقات تقدر بتريليون و336 مليار وإيرادات تقدر تقريبا بتريليون 91 مليار وبالتالي عجز يقدر تقريبا 245.
All right. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is more than halfway through its Vision 2030 blueprint for economic transformation. The strategy has been introduced by de facto under ruler Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in 2016, which calls for hundreds of billions of dollars in government investments to win the kingdom's economy of its dependence on hydrocarbons in revenue. Let's listen in to what Al-Jadani had to say.
رحلة ال4-5 سنوات القادمة بإذن الله تعالى سيكون التركيز على التأكد من استمرار نمو جميع القطاعات، لكن هناك قطاعات سيتم التركيز عليها بشكل أكبر. قطاعات مثل الصناعة، السياحة، النقل والخدمات اللوجستية. لا يمكن أن يكون لديك قطاع صناعي جيد ولا قطاع سياحي ينمو دون أن يكون لديك قطاع نقل وخدمات لوجستية فاعل.
And I request Lev to join us back into the discussion here. Lev, the 2026 budget adopts a slightly more cautious stance than the 2025 one. What do you think are the key reasons for that? All right, I believe there are some connection issues with our guest there, but do stay on viewers with us as we try to get him back. For now, let's tell you that expenditures have increased from 2.2% from 285 trillion to 3.3 trillion. And in fact, Lev has now joined us back. Lev, what do you think are the key reasons that the 2026 Saudi budget is adopting a more cautious stance than the last year's? All right, viewers, I believe there is continuing some connection issue with our guest there, but let's give you some more details. The Saudi government has said that the budget positions the kingdom to balance short-term fiscal pressure with long-term structural reforms, even as global oil markets remain volatile. Expenditures increased from 2.2% from Saudi Riyal 1.25 trillion to Saudi Riyal 1.313 trillion, though actual 2025 spending rose above Saudi Riyal 1.35 trillion due to overruns. Those are some of the crucial details of the 2026 Saudi budget, and with that we will now move on. All right, and Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara met delegation from U.S. oil major Chevron and the Syrian Petroleum Company on Tuesday to discuss cooperation in oil and gas exploration. Representatives from Qatar's UCC Holdings, which recently signed a $7 billion memorandum for power projects, also attended the meeting. Syria's energy infrastructure has been heavily damaged by its 14-year civil war, leaving domestic electricity and gas production far below demand. The country's natural gas output has fallen to around 3 billion cubic meters in 2023, down from 8.7 billion cubic meters in 2011. Damascus has pledged to increase power supply, and the discussions with Chevron and international partners are part of ongoing efforts to rebuild the energy sector. And that's a wrap on Gulf today, but do keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from across the world.